next step we need to look at is mastering the various calendars that is built into Microsoft Project. And that's what we intend to do right now. Now, first things first, what you need to understand that this is key to making Microsoft Project work for you and not the other way around. You see, all of the tasks that you'll be setting up within Microsoft Project 2010 are scheduled according to the settings that you make on your calendars. In a similar way, when you assign resources to tasks, they also will carry out the work according to the calendars. So you need to understand what we mean by the various calendars. Now, in Microsoft Project 2010, the base calendar consists of 3 default calendars. The standard, which has each workday, Monday through to Friday, starting work at 8 o'clock in the morning, working through till 5 in the afternoon, 1700, with 1 hour off for lunch. In other words, an 8-hour day, 5 days a week. The standard calendar does not work weekends. You've got a night shift calendar. This one starts at 11 p.m. in the evening and works through to 8 a.m. in the morning with 1 hour for dinner, and that works from Monday through to Saturday as a standard work week. Then there's a 24 hours calendar, which does as you might expect, it's full on all the time. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week work time. And it's against these 3 that you would set up the way in which you want your particular project to work, depending on the time environment within which that project is taking place. So these are called the base calendars. Now this little diagram down here is absolutely vital for you to understand at a top level. You take one of these 3 base calendars and you apply it to these 3 levels. And I've done this at the highest level here, being the resources. You see, when you apply a resource to a task, it is the resource that carries out the work. Therefore, the calendar assigned to the resource will have the final say, if you see the point I'm making. When it comes to a task, by default, there is no calendar attached to it. So if you put Sue to invent a resource on a 5-day task, it would be Sue's calendar and the work hours that were set that would determine when that task starts and finishes. If you assign a task calendar, then what Microsoft Project does, it takes the common areas of time between the task calendar and the common areas of time between the resource calendar, and that's the portion that is used to carry out the work. You have the project calendar, which you set up first. But can you see that whatever the project calendar says, if you've got a task calendar, it would override it to allow you to set a particular task to take place in the time frame period that you choose, whereas if you put a resource on that task, the final say must be the resources calendar. That's just like it would be in the real world. So these 3 base calendars, you have to make a decision at the beginning of the project, and it's absolutely vital you understand this, that you should set up the calendars before you enter a single task. Because entering a task, then modifying the calendar, may affect the task in a way that you weren't expecting. So you'd want to do this first. Decide which of the base calendars is going to be set up for your project calendar. Now you may be asking yourself, well, my environment isn't the same as this environment. None of these actually suits exactly how this project is to work. In which case, you can make a copy of one of these, and I've invented a project called Fast Track here, and it would be that would be applied to your project calendar. You would then want to obviously assign that project calendar time frame to the resources and to the tasks. But you may find that certain tasks must take place outside of the standard Fast Track project calendar, if that's what you're using, in which case you might want to modify this. And when it comes to resources, you might find certain individuals don't work on certain days because maybe they're attending college or something else. Bottom line is that Project has made this totally flexible. There would be screams of horror if you'd learned that after investing in Microsoft Project there was only one calendar, and like it or lump it. So Project's made it ultimately flexible and tailorable, but it does mean you need to understand clearly how these work together, and that of course is what we'll be covering in Module 4. So let's just talk briefly about resource and task calendars. Now resources, don't forget, can be many things. They can be an individual, a skill or experience or knowledge set. For example, an engineer. You don't need to know their name, so you could assign 3 generic engineers to a task, for example. Resources could also be materials or supplies, or provision of services or consumables, or even a facility. For example, a resource could be a training suite that you need to use to train your customers or users within your project. Or of course, resources just could be money. So project has 3 types of resource, called work, that's human, material, and cost. Now what you need to know for the moment is that only one resource type, that's the work resource type, has its own calendar. Because of course the others are not limited by time in any way. Material resources are usually based on how many of them you want. For example, 6 drums of cable rather than when the cable works. Can you see it? It would have no relevance to time. But the project calendar, of course, which uses a particular base calendar, is the default calendar that's used for all scheduling when tasks start and finish. But when it comes to resources, then they want to combine the base calendar settings with any non-working times for each resource. Project 2010 calls these differences exceptions. In a similar way, of course, you can set exceptions for a particular task. If you had a maintenance task, that may only be able to take place outside of normal working hours. So the individuals and the task might have a particular calendar or a modified calendar with special exceptions to show that they actually work outside normal working hours when maintenance needs to take place, just as an example.